I had spent decades devoted to my family, always prioritizing harmony, love, and patience. That evening, however, everything changed. During a minor disagreement at dinner, my daughter-in-law, furious over a trivial misunderstanding, spat directly in my face. Shock, humiliation, and disbelief struck me all at once. My own son, instead of protecting me, coldly said, "You deserved that." I did not shout. I did not retaliate. I went to my bedroom, every nerve tense, but my mind was sharp and calculating. I realized that silence could be a more powerful weapon than anger. Every insult, every glare, every whisper was catalogued, transforming humiliation into a quiet resolve. By morning, the house smelled of golden pancakes, warm pastries, and fresh coffee. The breakfast table was lavish, covered with a feast so inviting it drew every guest to stare. And when they looked to see who was seated next to me, their faces went pale. Patience has become my most dangerous weapon. My name is Harriet Kingsley. I am 62 years old. That evening, I was bustling around the house, carefully polishing surfaces, fluffing cushions, and straightening the curtains. I wanted everything to feel warm, inviting, and perfect for the family dinner I had been looking forward to all week. The soft glow of the chandelier cast a golden light on the dining room, reflecting off crystal glasses and polished silverware. I imagined the smiles, laughter, and casual conversation that would fill the room. Every detail mattered, from the placement of the cutlery to the folds and the napkins, because I wanted to create a sense of harmony, a sanctuary where everyone could enjoy each other's company. Little did I know that the very evening I had planned with love and care would shatter my expectations and leave me with a quiet, burning determination. I moved to the dining room table, setting it meticulously as if arranging pieces in a delicate puzzle. The tablecloth was crisp and white, candles were placed symmetrically, and a small bouquet of fresh lilies added elegance and warmth. I aligned the plates just so, making sure every fork and knife reflected the candlelight perfectly. In the kitchen, I arranged the dishes I had prepared earlier: savory pies, roasted vegetables, and a golden honey glaze on the centerpiece roast. Everything had to feel effortless, inviting, yet luxurious. I imagined my family's expressions when they walked in, how they would comment on the aromas, the colors, and the thoughtfulness behind each detail. The anticipation of togetherness filled me with pride, but deep down, a small unease lingered, subtle tension I couldn't yet name, a flicker that would soon flare into chaos. The first guests arrived, bringing a hum of conversation and the warm feeling of familiarity. I greeted each with a smile and open arms, feeling the joy of hosting the room. Laughter echoed as coats were hung, and small gifts and dishes were placed on the side table. I watched my children interact, noting the easy camaraderie and light teasing that felt comforting. The aroma of the dishes mingled with the faint scent of perfume and cologne, creating a symphony of domestic life I had always cherished. Pride swelled inside me as I realized how my efforts were paying off. The table, the house, the atmosphere, all coming together perfectly. For a moment, I let myself believe this evening would be remembered for warmth and connection, never imagining the storm that was about to hit. Even as the laughter and chatter continued, I noticed a subtle undercurrent of tension. My daughter-in-law, Genevieve, sat slightly apart, her eyes narrowing as she observed everything with a sharp, critical gaze. Whispers passed between her and my son, Caleb, and I caught fragments, muted tones, impatient sighs, and hints of disapproval. I tried to ignore it, attributing it to nerves or fatigue, but the unease lingered. It was the kind of tension that grows like a shadow at the edge of light, almost invisible until it suddenly becomes overwhelming. I reminded myself to remain composed, smiling politely at Genevieve and continuing to move gracefully between tasks, but the flicker of discomfort gnawed at me, a quiet warning that tonight would not unfold the way I had hoped. A minor comment about the seating arrangement sparked the conflict. I tried to mediate diplomatically, suggesting compromises and reminding everyone of the spirit of togetherness. But Genevieve's irritation flared, her voice rising sharply as she accused me of interfering. Caleb, caught in between, offered vague reassurances, but his tone lacked conviction, leaving me exposed. The tension that had been simmering now boiled over. Guests exchanged uneasy glances, unsure how to respond as the polite atmosphere dissolved into confrontation. I kept my voice measured, my posture calm, refusing to let anger take over, even as the humiliation of being challenged in my own home began to sting. Every word and gesture mattered, and I silently vowed that I would not let this insult pass without quietly reclaiming control. Before I could respond further, Genevieve leaned forward, her anger reaching a terrifying climax, and spat directly into my face. Time seemed to stop. Shock froze my movements and gasps filled the room. Caleb, instead of intervening, looked at me coldly and said, "You deserved that." The sting of betrayal cut deeper than the spit itself. Humiliation, disbelief, and fury swirled inside me, but I did not retaliate. I did not yell. I felt a quiet, burning resolve begin to ignite, a seed of patience and strategy taking root. While everyone else reacted with surprise and awkward silence, I took the insult in stride, knowing that silence, observation, and careful planning would be my most potent weapons. I stepped back quietly, excusing myself to the bedroom, my movements deliberate and composed. My face burned from humiliation, but my mind was crystal clear. Every glance, every whispered comment, every unfair judgment from the evening was catalogued in my mind. I closed the door behind me and sat in quiet reflection, letting the initial shock fade into determination. The plan began to take shape. Patience, subtle influence, and strategic actions would replace confrontation. I realized that the storm outside my bedroom door could not control me. I would control the storm instead. The fire of revenge burned silently but fiercely, and by morning the events of tonight would unfold differently, in a way they would never forget. Sitting alone in her quiet bedroom, Harriet replayed every detail of the previous night. The spit, the smirk of her son, the stunned silence of the guests, it all fueled a simmering determination inside her. She realized that anger would only lead to rash decisions. Instead, patience and strategy would become her greatest weapons. Each insult and slight was meticulously analyzed, transformed into data for a calculated response. She considered the family's habits, weaknesses, and pride, mentally charting how subtle moves could restore her dignity while exposing arrogance. Every thought was deliberate, every memory a tool. Harriet felt the quiet power of planning unfold within her, and she resolved that by morning, the events that humiliated her would instead become a stage for authority, leaving no one in doubt about who truly held control. Harriet picked up her phone, calling only those she trusted implicitly, friends who understood her character and shared her sense of justice. She spoke in measured tones, careful not to reveal her full strategy, hinting only at the situation's gravity. Each call was a subtle thread in a web of influence she was weaving, ensuring that support and validation would be quietly in place when the time came. Allies promised discretion, and Harriet felt a surge of confidence knowing she had invisible backup. Even without physical presence, these trusted voices would amplify the effect of her forthcoming actions. She smiled, imagining the ripple of realization that would pass through the family when they sensed the silent forces aligned against their arrogance, all orchestrated without a single loud confrontation. Harriet began observing every interaction in the household with heightened awareness. She noted how her son spoke to his wife, Genevieve, and how others responded to subtle cues. Every hesitation, glance, or minor slip became a clue to exploit later. She paid attention to their social habits, prideful gestures, and vulnerabilities, cataloging what could later be used to subtly assert authority. Even seemingly inconsequential conversations were mentally logged. Nothing escaped her attention. This observation was quiet yet potent. She became a ghostly presence in her own home, influencing events without speaking. Each piece of knowledge strengthened her confidence that she could reclaim respect and control, not through aggression, but by letting the family's own flaws illuminate the path for her subtle revenge. Harriet methodically reviewed recent events, mentally noting every minor mistake and oversight by Genevieve and Caleb. Misplaced words, overlooked obligations, and small acts of carelessness were now cataloged like evidence in a case she intended to present. Each error became a building block in her plan, a tool to expose arrogance and demand accountability. The process was meticulous, nothing was too trivial. By creating this mental archive, she ensured that when she acted, she would do so with precision and authority, leaving no room for counterarguments. The quiet power of preparation surged within her, and she understood that the family's misjudgments would become the stage upon which she would assert her dignity and command respect, all while maintaining her composure. Harriet began rehearsing her responses, imagining how she would guide conversations, reveal observations, and subtly correct mistakes. Each scenario was played out in her mind, anticipating reactions, flinches, and stammers. She visualized Genevieve's arrogance faltering, Caleb's smirk dissolving, and guests' eyes widening with realization. This mental rehearsal was more than planning. It was training, refining her patience and timing to perfection. By anticipating every possible reaction, she ensured her eventual moves would feel effortless yet devastatingly effective. Confidence and control grew within her, replacing the sting of humiliation with a quiet, thrilling sense of empowerment. Every imagined outcome reinforced the inevitability of her plan, and she knew the household would soon witness the consequences of underestimating her intelligence and foresight. Harriet began planting subtle actions, designed to create minor disruptions that would magnify their arrogance and mistakes. A slight rearrangement of seating, casual reminders of forgotten tasks, or perfectly timed questions during casual conversation would serve as nudges that exposed flaws. These moves were invisible at first glance, but set the groundwork for the eventual reveal. Each small action was deliberate, a test of her family's reactions and vulnerabilities. By acting indirectly, she maintained calm and composure, allowing the family's own errors to accelerate the plan. It was a quiet choreography of influence, every gesture measured, every observation strategic, all building toward the moment when her patience and foresight would transform humiliation into undeniable authority. Finally, Harriet reviewed the entire sequence of her plan, ensuring every action and reaction aligned perfectly. Timing was critical. Each subtle move had to create maximum impact while remaining imperceptible until the culmination. She imagined the morning breakfast, the reactions of the guests, and the shock that would sweep over Genevieve and Caleb. Every detail, every nuance, and every small manipulation was accounted for. Harriet felt a calm satisfaction knowing the pieces were in place. She was no longer the passive observer of humiliation. She was the architect of the unfolding consequences. Her strategy, meticulous and patient, promised that by the time the household realized what had happened, control and respect would have shifted completely in her favor. Harriet began the morning with deliberate calm, arranging subtle gestures to establish her quiet influence. She prepared a small breakfast for the family, placing plates and utensils with meticulous precision. Each movement was intentional, from the way she poured tea to the placement of napkins. Guests arrived, noticing the care she took, unaware of the invisible strategy unfolding. Harriet smiled faintly, serving dishes with elegance, making casual remarks about past memories that seemed innocent but subtly reminded the family of their oversights. Every word and gesture was measured, designed to draw attention to her composure and patience, while highlighting the chaos and arrogance of those who had humiliated her. Each small act was a test, setting the stage for the larger revelations that would soon leave everyone stunned. Without raising her voice, Harriet used indirect influence to create subtle tension around Genevieve and Caleb. She asked casual, probing questions about schedules and past promises, their hesitation betraying flustered nerves. She complimented other guests for recalling details Genevieve had overlooked, drawing invisible comparisons that did not go unnoticed. Every pause, every hesitant glance, amplified the unease. Harriet remained serene, her calmness in stark contrast to the tension she cultivated. Observing the minor slip-ups and small stammers, she realized how effective patience and precision could be in establishing dominance without confrontation. By the end of the morning, whispers and subtle glances between family members revealed the first cracks in Genevieve and Caleb's facade, signaling that the plan was beginning to unfold perfectly. Every flustered gesture, stammered response, and misstep by Genevieve and Caleb became a point of leverage for Harriet. She observed as Genevieve mispronounced names, placed utensils incorrectly, and tried to redirect conversations awkwardly. Caleb fidgeted, attempting to mediate but only exposing his lack of control. Each minor mistake was mentally catalogued, forming a growing dossier that Harriet could use strategically. Even the smallest lapses, hesitation, eye contact avoidance, subtle stammers were evidence of their vulnerability. By silently recording these actions, she ensured that when the moment of revelation came, there would be no room for denial. Each error, magnified by her calm presence, subtly reinforced her authority and influence, demonstrating that patience and observation could be far more powerful than immediate retaliation. Harriet mentally documented every interaction, no detail too small. She noted tones of voice, shifts in posture, and facial expressions that betrayed insecurity or arrogance. Conversations were dissected in real time. Who interrupted, who faltered, who attempted to assert control. This meticulous mental record would become her arsenal, giving her power over narratives and conversations later. While everyone else remained distracted by the ordinary events of breakfast, Harriet's mind was active, cataloging weaknesses and mapping influence. Each recorded detail reinforced the inevitability of her plan. She felt a quiet thrill realizing that the mistakes of others were unfolding naturally, requiring no aggression from her. Control was being restored silently, as if by invisible hands, and she was at the center, orchestrating every outcome with precision. Harriet allowed everyday moments to work in her favor, stepping back while small, revealing incidents naturally surfaced. A dropped utensil, a misplaced dish, or a hesitant comment became a reflection of the household's mismanagement. She intervened only minimally, ensuring that her influence remained subtle and indirect. By letting natural interactions expose flaws, she avoided confrontation while reinforcing her authority. Each vulnerability revealed by these minor incidents became part of her strategy, subtly undermining Genevieve and Caleb's confidence. Harriet's patience transformed ordinary domestic routines into tools of power, turning what could have been embarrassing coincidences into evidence of incompetence, all while she maintained flawless composure and the appearance of calm hospitality. Harriet's keen eye extended beyond immediate participants to watch extended family and friends. Their reactions, the quiet surprise, subtle whispers, and pointed glances, added layers of pressure on Genevieve and Caleb. Witnesses unintentionally amplified the tension, observing flaws and inconsistencies Harriet had orchestrated subtly. Each reaction was mentally noted, reinforcing her understanding of social dynamics and the power of perception. She realized that influence could spread without direct action, as long as the environment and timing were carefully curated. The household was becoming a stage, and she was directing the scene without raising her voice, letting social observation work in tandem with her strategic patience to shift power toward herself. By mid-morning, Harriet began to notice the first signs of genuine unease. Genevieve fidgeted, avoiding eye contact, her voice slightly higher than usual. Caleb's forced smiles faltered. He looked uncertain, aware of cracks forming in the facade of control they had maintained. Guests whispered, sharing subtle observations, reinforcing their discomfort. Harriet's composed demeanor contrasted sharply with their growing anxiety, amplifying its effect. She recognized the moment as the tipping point. The plan was gaining momentum. Their panic was proof that patience, observation, and subtle orchestration were achieving results, quietly shifting respect and authority toward her without confrontation, setting the stage for the ultimate reveal and empowerment she had envisioned. As the day unfolded, small mistakes began to accumulate, magnifying the tension within the household. Genevieve mispronounced names, dropped napkins, and fumbled with silverware, each error drawing attention from the guests. Caleb tried to intervene, offering awkward reassurances, but only amplified the miscommunication. Harriet observed silently, noting every gesture and misplaced word, her calm demeanor contrasting sharply with the growing chaos. Every minor slip became a reflection of their arrogance and carelessness, quietly reinforcing her control over the situation. Guests exchanged curious glances, sensing the underlying discord without fully understanding its source. Harriet's patience allowed the situation to escalate naturally, ensuring that by the time she chose to act, the household's vulnerabilities would be fully exposed, setting the stage for a dramatic revelation. Guests and extended family began to notice inconsistencies, creating an invisible pressure on Genevieve and Caleb. Observant eyes caught small mistakes, incorrect stories, forgotten promises, awkward gestures that Harriet had cataloged and subtly highlighted through casual remarks. Whispers circulated, building a network of scrutiny that increased the household's tension. Each observation reinforced the daughters-in-law's and sons' growing unease, magnifying the impact of their earlier arrogance. Harriet remained composed, letting the natural ripple effect of social attention amplify her influence. Her silent orchestration ensured that every misstep became more visible, not just to her, but to everyone present. By allowing others to notice these flaws, Harriet harnessed the power of perception, turning the social environment itself into a tool of subtle revenge and psychological dominance. While everyone else fumbled and whispered, Harriet maintained a serene composure that only heightened the contrast. She moved through the room gracefully, serving refreshments, engaging guests in polite conversation, all while keeping a watchful eye on Genevieve and Caleb. Her presence was quietly commanding, an invisible force that subtly shifted attention and respect toward her. She did not intervene directly, but allowed the mounting tension to do her bidding. Every misstep, every awkward glance, and every hesitant word from the daughter-in-law and son reinforced her authority. Harriet realized that by remaining calm, she magnified the effect of their mistakes, demonstrating that true power often lies in restraint, observation, and strategic timing rather than immediate retaliation. Harriet began orchestrating subtle situations designed to expose further weaknesses. She asked pointed questions in passing, nudged conversations in ways that revealed oversights, and arranged minor logistical challenges for them to navigate. Each carefully calculated action forced Genevieve and Caleb into mistakes without her ever confronting them directly. A dropped utensil, a moment of hesitation, or a forgotten word became evidence of their faltering control. Harriet's quiet orchestration ensured that the mistakes appeared natural, making their errors seem inevitable and exposing their arrogance in front of everyone. The family's unease increased as her composed presence quietly dominated the room, demonstrating the effectiveness of patience and subtle influence over overt confrontation. The tension in the household grew palpable, like a storm hovering just out of sight. Genevieve became visibly flustered, her voice trembling during conversation, while Caleb struggled to maintain control, each word betraying frustration. Guests whispered among themselves, noticing the awkward interactions, the stilted responses, and the growing power imbalance. Harriet moved with effortless composure, maintaining a polite smile as the household dynamics shifted subtly but unmistakably. Every glance, pause, and minor slip amplified the unease, making the household increasingly fragile. The more Harriet observed, the more apparent it became that the plan was working perfectly. The very mistakes that had seemed insignificant hours earlier now created a cumulative effect, leaving the daughter-in-law and son exposed and vulnerable. By mid-morning, mistakes compounded at a rapid pace. Genevieve dropped silverware, mismanaged dishes, and contradicted herself in front of guests, each error magnified by the presence of attentive eyes. Caleb's attempts to cover up only drew attention to the underlying chaos. Harriet silently documented each misstep, mentally reinforcing the evidence she could leverage later. The household's faltering authority became obvious to everyone, and whispers of surprise and concern spread among family and friends. What had begun as subtle tension had escalated into full exposure, leaving Genevieve and Caleb unable to maintain the control they once believed they held. Harriet's patience and observation had transformed minor mistakes into a powerful tool of influence. With every subtle error and awkward interaction, Harriet's plan reached its final alignment. The household, guests, and extended family were now unwittingly complicit in highlighting the flaws of Genevieve and Caleb. Every misstep, every tense glance, and every whisper reinforced the imbalance of power. Harriet, calm and poised, observed silently as anticipation built, knowing that the moment for revelation was imminent. The stage was perfectly set. All that remained was the final execution. Her patience, strategy, and subtle orchestration had created an environment in which humiliation and authority collided, priming the household for the unforgettable morning that would shift respect, attention, and power entirely in her favor. Want to see the shocking moment they realized who was really in control? Hit like and subscribe, because everything is about to change. Morning light spilled through the curtains as Harriet moved quietly through the kitchen, each step measured and deliberate. The table was a vision of perfection. Golden pancakes stacked high, fresh pastries glistening with honey, fruits arranged like jewels, and steaming mugs of coffee inviting everyone to gather. Every detail was meticulously planned, from the placement of utensils to the subtle arrangement of napkins. Guests began trickling in, drawn by the aroma, curious yet unaware of the tension building beneath the surface. Harriet's calm, serene demeanor contrasted sharply with the anxiety she had subtly cultivated in Genevieve and Caleb. Inside, a quiet thrill coursed through her. This was more than breakfast. It was a stage, and every movement, every glance, every scent had been orchestrated to signal a shift in control, one that no one would see coming. The door opened, and in walked a respected family friend, someone whose presence carried weight and unquestioned authority. Harriet had invited them subtly, knowing their influence would immediately command attention. Gasps rippled through the room as they took the seat beside her, their calm confidence shining in stark contrast to Genevieve's visible tension. Caleb's eyes widened, and his composure faltered for the first time that morning. Harriet smiled faintly, serving the first plate of breakfast, observing as the invisible power dynamic shifted. The friend's presence alone amplified her authority. Their approving glances and quiet nods subtly reinforced Harriet's poise. The daughter-in-law's earlier arrogance began to crumble under the weight of this unexpected alliance, and Harriet felt the quiet satisfaction of patience and strategy manifesting flawlessly. Genevieve froze, eyes wide, her carefully constructed composure cracking under the unexpected circumstances. She looked from Harriet to the influential guest, realization dawning that she had underestimated the situation entirely. Caleb, too, faltered, unsure how to navigate this new dynamic. Whispered glances between them betrayed their growing panic. Guests, sensing tension but unaware of the full story, exchanged curious looks. Harriet remained composed, every smile and gesture deliberate, radiating calm authority. She poured coffee with elegance, served pastries with care, and spoke lightly about trivial topics, each word subtly highlighting the daughter-in-law's earlier mistakes without direct confrontation. The room felt suspended in time. An invisible shift had occurred, and everyone present could sense that Harriet was quietly, effortlessly, reclaiming power and respect. Over breakfast, Harriet engaged in casual conversation, sprinkling in carefully chosen remarks that drew attention to minor oversights and forgotten promises. She spoke softly, referencing past incidents as anecdotes, never accusatory, but enough to make Genevieve flush with embarrassment. Caleb struggled to interject, his attempts at defending her faltering under Harriet's poised demeanor. Guests listened intently, sensing subtle tensions they could not fully name. Every word Harriet uttered was a demonstration of controlled authority, a silent yet undeniable statement of intelligence and patience. Her strategic remarks illuminated flaws without confrontation, leaving the daughter-in-law flustered and unsure. By the time the last sip of coffee was poured, it was clear to everyone that Harriet had orchestrated the morning flawlessly. Humiliation transformed into quiet, unassailable authority. As conversations flowed, guests began to notice inconsistencies in Genevieve's words and actions. Forgotten details, misremembered plans, and awkward pauses highlighted her earlier arrogance. Caleb's attempts to maintain control only drew attention to these flaws. Harriet remained serene, calmly guiding conversations, subtly emphasizing clarity and order without raising her voice. Each gesture and observation reinforced her presence as a competent, composed authority. Admiration quietly shifted toward Harriet, her patience and strategy now fully visible to everyone present. The daughter-in-law's anxiety intensified as she realized she had underestimated the power of calm intelligence, and the room became a stage for Harriet's silent, deliberate triumph. Harriet, now fully in command of the room, spoke with confidence and composure, asserting control without aggression. She addressed minor mishaps with gentle corrections, highlighting order and efficiency in a way that drew respect rather than resentment. Guests naturally followed her lead, and Genevieve's attempts to challenge or redirect fell flat, stifled by the quiet authority Harriet exuded. Caleb, once smug, now glanced at her with newfound recognition, realizing the depth of her patience and foresight. Every subtle correction, every poised gesture, solidified Harriet's dominance in the room, establishing a clear hierarchy without a single raised voice, demonstrating that true power lies in strategy, patience, and composure rather than confrontation. By the end of breakfast, Harriet's plan had reached its apex. Guests left with admiration for her poise, the daughter-in-law slunk into silence, and Caleb quietly acknowledged her authority. The household dynamic had shifted completely. Respect, attention, and subtle influence were now firmly in Harriet's favor. She had transformed humiliation into empowerment, demonstrating that intelligence, patience, and quiet strategy could outmaneuver arrogance and entitlement. Sitting back with a calm smile, Harriet savored the satisfaction of her victory. Not loud, not dramatic, but undeniable. The morning had cemented her dignity, independence, and authority, leaving a lasting impression on everyone who had witnessed the subtle, powerful reclamation of control. Her silent, strategic triumph would be remembered long after the plates were cleared.